Welcome to the social carrying capacity session. As you know, social carrying capacity is increasingly used to guide sustainable destination management. However, many destinations do struggle with the concept, with applying the concept, and they struggle to translate it into practical place-specific strategies. So we decided to run this session to help you, to inspire you, to show you what other destinations are doing. And as I mentioned, we ran a session on Monday where three presenters from Aalborg in Denmark showed us how they've approached social carrying capacity study in their city. So you will also get a recording from that session if you would like to have a look at that. That was very interesting. We had three speakers, both from the DMO and from the local university. And they talked about the cooperation and how they've done, how they've sort of approached the project and what's next for the social carrying capacity study in Aalborg. So this is the second session, and my name is Marta. I'm the relationship manager for the Nordics and Central Europe here at GDS-Movement, and I'm joined by three brilliant academics. By Oksana Tokarchuk, Associate Professor from University of Trento, by Dr. Tina Segota, another Associate Professor from University of Maribor in Slovenia, and from Heiske Sibrijns, researcher and lecturer from the Netherlands. Could you please introduce yourselves and tell us a little bit more about how you work with social carrying capacity?
Let me start. Thank you very much for being invited to this webinar. My name is Oksana Tokarchuk. I work at the University of Trento. Before joining University of Trento, I worked for 11 years at the Free University of Bolzano when I was teaching and working at the Department of Tourism. And most of my research work was related to social carrying capacity and investigating when and how tourism pressure leads to problems and how can destinations cope with it from a managerial perspective.
Hello everyone, my name is Tina Segota, and as previously said, I come from the University of Maribor in Slovenia. My work is highly related to the I would say quality of life that is happening at destinations. I have quite a long history of looking into residents' attitudes towards tourism from many different destinations, one of which is also Bled in Slovenia, which is always on the top of customers' mind, visitors' mind when they come to Slovenia, but also looking at the Slovenian coast. And I have seen that one of the colleagues from the Slovenian coast is here today with us from Piran, where I did also my research. And now, as a scholar, I'm interested in how tourism is affecting children's quality of life, and children, not only those young, age 10 or 11, but also, I would say, going into teenager years, student years, and so on. So that's where I stand.
Thank you. My name is Geeske Sibrijns, and I'm from in Holland University of Applied Sciences in the Netherlands, and we are based in Rotterdam, Amsterdam, and Haarlem, and I work in both cities. And I've been conducting research on over-tourism in Amsterdam for a long time, and from first perspective, so how can we spread tourists throughout Amsterdam and throughout the Netherlands? And in the last year, I've been conducting research on the other side. So what's the opinion of residents actually on tourism in Amsterdam, and what's their sentiment and feelings on tourism? So we just published a research about resident sentiment a few weeks ago, which I'm going to present later on. So thanks.
Thank you. Thank you very much. Fantastic experts. Really good. And I'm really looking forward to it because we're going to have a nice variety of case studies from different parts of Europe. So just before I pass it on to our presenters, just a few housekeeping note. So as I said, the webinar is being recorded. We've got a chat, so please put anything in the chat, your comments, your feedback. Maybe you've got some questions while we're presenting, so please put them on. We will have time for questions after each presentations and also a bit of time at the end of the webinar. I'm going to do a very quick introduction on social carrying capacity, and then I will pass it on to our presenters. So as I said, we will start from Oksana from case studies from Italy, then we'll move to Slovenia and Croatia, and then at the end we'll hear about Amsterdam's case. And hopefully we'll have some questions to the end as well. We have some time to the questions. So I've just done this exactly. And raise your virtual hand. I forgot to say that if you want to speak, but mainly just use the chat and you feel free to use any reactions on Zoom if you wish. So very quick introduction to social carrying capacity. So why are we doing this? So social carrying capacity is about understanding sort of the social limit of place. So how many visitors a destination can welcome before daily life, before the community well-being and the visitor experience starts to decline. So it's an assessment of the maximum acceptable level of tourism use before social impact occurs. And generally, social carrying capacity focuses on how residents feel about tourism pressure, how visitors experience shifts when spaces become crowded or commercialized, and also how community life, culture, and social cohesion evolve as tourist numbers grow. And why it matters. As you know, we have introduced the social capacity criteria in 2024 under our DM section, under visitor management. And it matters because social carrying capacity helps us understand resident well-being, visitor experience, community resilience, and it also has got impact on destination reputations. So it helps us understand whether the residents are feeling at home and safe and valued in their own destination. When it comes to visitor experience, so it helps us understand whether crowds, queue or congestion is reducing the quality of the visitor experience of people who are coming and stay and visit in our place. Community resilience, again, this helps us understand whether public spaces, housing, local businesses and culture are still supporting residents as well as visitors. And also when it comes to destination reputation, they answer questions whether growth creating long-term value of risking frustration, polarization, and so is growth creating long-term value or risking frustration, polarization, and decline of our destinations, both in the eyes of residents and visitors. So yes, we introduced it in the DM7, the visit management, and we've seen over the last couple of years that not that many destinations have conducted any social or environmental social carrying capacity studies. So the criterion, when we verify it, we will look whether the destinations hasn't conducted an assessment of the maximum acceptable level of tourism use before social impact occur. So and we also understand that carrying capacity approaches can vary, but they must include a structured methodology, clearly defined indicators or thresholds, and also a direct link to management actions and policies. And this is what we will be assessing you and verifying under the DM7 social and carrying capacity studies. Just last thing here, so as I mentioned, we introduced the criteria in 2024, and only 15% of the top 40 destinations in the GDS index had conducted social carrying capacity study at the time. Then by 2025, the number has increased. More destinations are understand the need to do it. They're conducting initial research. They're engaging with local universities, like we just had in Aalborg on Monday. They're starting an engagement with academia and various experts to conduct different assessments, to start having those sort of early reference points, early understanding what's happening in this sphere in their own cities. So we've had an increase to 22.5% of the top 40 destinations that have conducted social carrying capacity case studies. So it's a good it's a progress. Looking forward to seeing what's going to happen in this year's index. And I'm just going to stop my sharing my screen and pass over to Oksana. Oksana, the floor is yours.
Okay, thank you very much, Marta. And thank you for this wonderful introduction. So I can now relate better my study. And the case study I want to present today, and I was asked to present today, is related to the resident well-being. So it's not on the visitor experience, although I also do research in this area. But I want to talk to you about the resident well-being. And it is, I think, in between of what you define as a resident well-being and community resilience, as you will see in a minute. So what is the idea of my presentation is that, well, I say many destinations collect data on residents' perception. Actually, it doesn't look like so many. As you said, Marta, 22.5% of top 40 destinations did collect. And in fact, I will comment on this in a minute. But the question here is, how do we translate this data into something which is actionable for the destination? Let me give you an example of Garda Trentino destination, a study in which I participated personally, I conducted personally. Just to give you an idea, probably not everyone knows what I'm talking about. So Garda is a Garda Lake. It is located in the northern part of Italy. And I'm talking about the small piece of the Garda Trentino, which is located in Trentino province. The Garda Lake is located among 3 regions, and a small piece, as you can see it here, is located in Trentino. It is relatively a small population, the whole destination. So the whole destination are the 3 municipalities that are on the area of the lake, and there are another 10 municipalities in the area. We are talking about less than 50,000 residents in this area, and with high visitor intensity. Approximately 4 million stays have been registered in 2025. The area is very narrow geographically. It's like a lake mountain corridor, so it is surrounded by mountains. It leads to the fact that there is limited road infrastructure, and the space is shared between cars, bikes, and pedestrians, which make it challenging for residents to live, let's say. Just to give you an idea, so you see the lake, and then there is this very narrow space between the mountains and the lake and several municipalities there. Garda Trentino, a part of being a lake destination, so sun and the beach, is also outdoor destination, so you can do different sports here, like biking, climbing, trekking. People like it. In fact, the destination is highly seasonal. As you can see, main arrivals are concentrated in the summer months. In particular, August is the peak. This, of course, leads to challenges to the local population and to the residents. So following this growing tourism, and I should mention that the tourism in the Garda Lake, in particular in Trentino side, in the last 10 years has grown by 20%. So there's a growing pressure on residents. And in the last years, especially after COVID, during the COVID recovery, a growing narrative among residents is getting strength about residents asking to stop promoting the destination. So the destination Garda Trentino is faced with the request from residents to reduce tourists. How does the destination try to address this request? So they initially focused on economic impact of tourism. In fact, our department has been contacted by the destination asking to perform a study on economic impact. We discussed why, and the idea was that if we present the economic impact of tourism and show to the residents how important is tourism for the whole area, everyone will start accepting it. Well, that was not the case. In fact, after a while, we managed to, so the social, although from the very beginning we insisted that if that was the problem and if we want to solve this growing preoccupation of residents in terms of the tourist pressure, we need to address social impacts. But it was not. It was perceived as a very sensitive topic. In fact, I understand why not so many destinations yet conducted the social carrying capacity studies, because there was a concern that we will open the tensions, but we will not provide clear solutions. Gradually, there was a change in the opinion, and last year we started this research. The research had two components. So on the one side, two perspectives. We did this structural review on the overall perception of the tourism, which is a very classical study in tourism, and I think you all know this type of the impacts and how it impacts the quality of life. What I'm interested to show you here, the other perspective, a complementary perspective to this general overall perception, we have taken the dynamic view. We wanted to see the changes across the season in order to actually see whether there is a carrying capacity, if we have reached it in the region, if we haven't reached it, and where is the overall the destination is located. So what we have done repeated resident surveys across the season. We did 5 observations during the season. So we wanted to, of course, have low season. We wanted to have high season. If we assume that the social carrying capacity is an inverted U-shaped function, in order to estimate it, we need to have estimations for low pressure period and for high pressure period. And so here residents were asked about how satisfied they were with their life as a resident in the last week. And we related this residence data with the data on tourism pressure, of course, for the same periods. And we distinguished between overnight stays and day visitors that were measured by mobile data provider. And then we did a joint reading of both. This is what I want to present to you. We collected around 2,300 responses from residents in these 14 municipalities over the 5 weeks during the season. Before I go to the actual results, let me show you the tourism. Let me share with you the average weekly pressure during our observations. So as you can see, in the low season, overnight stays are the area is mostly visited by day visitors. As you can see, the day visitors are 3 times higher than the overnight stays. When we go to the high season, we have almost 1-to-1, even more tourists, slightly more tourists than day visitors. And this is the highest season, and you can see in the previous graph you have seen the averages, but you can see how strong the pressure becomes during the high season. You can see that this small municipality of Nagotorboli, to 2,000 inhabitants, they face almost 40 tourists per resident on a weekly basis. So basically every resident sees every day almost 10 people more than normal. So what are the results? What we have done is we looked at the satisfaction with life of residents, and we collected with the tourism pressure, assuming this inverted U shape. An interesting thing is that the impact of both, so the impact of overnight stays is mediated by family dependence of income on tourism. So if we would take just data of overnight stays and resident satisfaction, we didn't have significant results. But once we have introduced the dependence of the income on tourism, we immediately see this result, and it is very robust. It's robust among all the observational periods, and on the overall data, you see the overall data presentation here. So as you see, this effect is stronger for families where their income is more reliant on tourism. But what we see is that actually the satisfaction with life of residents is not affected negatively by overnight stays. As you see, all the effects are over the, it's positive. It can be lower, it can be larger, but it is positive. When we look instead into the day visitors, what we see is that their impact is moderated by the car usage. So the more people rely on the usage of car for their everyday activity, the stronger is the negative impact of tourism, of the presence of day visitors in the area. As you can see here, people who strongly rely on the usage of their cars, they have a very negative impact of the presence of day visitors. So actually what we have discovered, and what was also very surprising for the destination itself, is that we changed the narrative. While the residents complain about tourists, and as you know, tourists, the definition of tourists is a person who spent at least one night in the destination. The actual problem are day visitors. But for a resident cannot distinguish whether it is a day visitor or is it a tourist who sleeps in the area. So we have brought the area in which the pressure really become problematic. So we do see that pressure becomes problematic when it interacts with the structural limits. So we don't say that the tourist pressure is bad everywhere. It becomes problematic when there are structural limits. And here in this area, there are strong structural limits because of limited space, shared infrastructure. There are strong mobility constraints, as you have seen from these results as well. What we see is that not all floors generate the same pressure. The strongest pressure is not generated by overnight tourists. It is generated by day visitors. But the way how we manage the overnight tourists and day visitors is very different. And when we have done the presentation of this study to the residents, but also to the mayors of these major municipalities affected by tourism, the mayors were very happy because they said, we finally have numbers that prove what we were feeling intuitively. We were feeling this, perceiving this, but we didn't know how to support this view by numbers. Now we finally have these numbers that support our view and that help us to solve our problem. Now, day visitors. Unfortunately, the data that we had for this research, we could not distinguish who are these day visitors. It is not a homogeneous group. We know that they could be local residents coming from other municipalities and the overall province. Of course, you cannot close the area to, Trentino people because they are tourists, right? There could be tourists that stay in nearby municipalities, but then they go to the lake, or they could be external excursionists coming from other regions overnight. Sorry, not overnight, coming for the events. Although the destination does not manage day visitors, the only day visitors they actually manage, in a sense, are those related to Christmas markets. But that's a different story. We didn't look into that one. So what we have seen is that we changed the narrative for the area. The problem are not tourists overnight stays. The problem are day visitors, and they have to be managed. So we cannot manage what we do not understand. We need to focus on floors. It's not tourism in general. We need to understand who are these day visitors, where do they come from, how's their behavior, what are their mobility patterns, in order to facilitate the life of residents, but also for tourists as well. So the question now is not how much tourism is too much. The question is which floors create pressure and how they can be made compatible with the everyday life of residents. So very quickly, that was my study. If you would like to have further information, I am very happy to answer all your questions, and these are my contacts.
Thank you very much, Oksana. That was super interesting to see that what you've done, and also the relationship that you built, undoubtedly with the local politicians. It was interesting that you said that there was some concern that that could be politically sensitive. I just wanted to ask you whether has it happened? Have you noticed anything that the results of the study have impacted the sort of the politicians in any way, positive or negative?
So that was the concern before doing the study. The destination was afraid that if they will open this vase, there would be issues. But the study by itself, I think it impacted positively. So we had a couple of mayors who said, finally, someone shows this with the data, so we can finally talk to province and try to solve this problem. Because the problem is that day visitors, the problem generated by day visitors are under the jurisdiction of municipalities. Tourists are managed by the destination, and so there was this need of sitting together and talking. There was also the politicians at the province level who said, at least in the presentation, he said, yes, we understand what is the problem, so now we will dedicate additional resources, and we have dedicated resources to municipalities. So I would say that was a positive impact.
Thank you. We've got a question from Valeria. How did you measure day visitors? I presume the question is about how do you distinguish?
Yeah, so how do we distinguish? We use the
Yeah.
mobile data, the count of people present in the area based on the mobile data count. Tourists are people who have spent one night. Day visitors are people who are not resident in the area but spend at least 4 hours in the area.
Thank you. Valeria, I hope this answered questions. If not, then raise your hand and ask more. Thank you very much, Oksana. I don't see any other questions. I've got some, but I'm going to save them for later. And if there are no more questions about Oksana's presentation, let's move on to Tina.
Yes.
Tina, the floor is yours.
Thank you. Well, I'm gonna, hopefully this works. Slides are on. You see my slides now?
Perfect.
Okay, and all good with my voice, Julia?
Yes, perfect.
Okay.
Thank you.
Well, initially I wanted to present the cases from Slovenia as well, but I decided that, given the short time, maybe it's better to focus on Dubrovnik and some of the research that I did there. Just in order to to all of you who are listening, we always hear Dubrovnik. Dubrovnik is the Pearl of the Adriatic. It has had the UNESCO Heritage Site status since late 1970s, so almost 50 years. It's one of the best European cruising destinations. It has been the King's Landing. So we all the time hear about all these nice things about Dubrovnik, and they are there for a reason. However, if you get a little bit more inside information into what is happening, somebody who has been observing Dubrovnik, maybe not from I would say, being a resident or having any economic benefit or working there, you might get an insight into how things have progressed, what were the reasons behind the boom of tourism, and what it kind of resulted in, and how they're dealing with this. So I've been observing Dubrovnik for the last, I would say, 16, 17 years. And one of the reasons is I'm not from Dubrovnik, but I am from Croatia. And I come from the northern part of Croatia in Istria, which compared to Dubrovnik is a drive-in destination, while Dubrovnik is a fly-in destination. So there are very different reasons, and you will see why such destinations have suffered during COVID, and also what were the results after it. But nonetheless, Dubrovnik, as I said, it has many accolades, and they are there for a reason, right? Well, in late 2000, going towards 2010, Dubrovnik started very heavily to position itself on a map to being one of the best European cruise destinations. And also the government, Croatian government, and also the municipality of Dubrovnik worked really hard on coming together and providing incentives for the film industry. And this is why they managed to snatch, I call it a snatch, but they managed to get the HBO series Game of Thrones being filmed in Dubrovnik since season 2. So the city became King's Landing. And if anyone is interested in why the red roofs are very, I would say, significant, they are not something that is historically there. So Dubrovnik at the beginning of the 90s was also a city that was heavily bombed. And the roofs, of course, were damaged. So when they recovered after the war in 1995, they actually changed the roof tiles, and this is where the red color today that we see comes from. And this was something that was really lucrative for the film industry, the HBO series, and also everyone else who was filming them. They're like Robin Hood, Star Wars, and so on. What it created in the decade from 2010 to the COVID, so 2019, that was the record year before COVID, is that there was a huge boom in the overnight stays. So there were, I would say, 8 million, 9 million overnight stays in the whole municipality of Dubrovnik, not the city itself, but the municipality, which on top of everyone, like the daily visits, creates a congestion and overcrowding. My colleagues from Dubrovnik, from the Faculty of Economics, actually did the research, and they calculated that if there wouldn't be a film-induced tourism, so if there wouldn't be Game of Thrones in particular, Dubrovnik would have a normal, steady pace of development. So their overnight stays, arrivals, and tickets sold to kind of tour the city walls would increase on average yearly 2 to 5%. Because there was filming, because of that particular HBO series, everything, so arrivals, overnights, and tickets sold for the walls increased by 30%, right? Well, that is good economically. On the other hand, it created a high pressure on the residents. They also, because it was a cruise destination, they had more than 600 cruise boats annually, which brought together almost 1 million cruise passengers. So of course, not all the passengers step down from the ship and go to Dubrovnik, but most of them did. So that means that from the port, which is not linked to the old city center, so the old town, you need to take a bus. You need to go by organized bus, come to a specific place, and this is where the major congestion happens. If you take a look at these numbers, I did the calculation, and you can see that in the times of COVID, Dubrovnik, the municipality of Dubrovnik still had some overnight stays, and they still had some tourists visiting. Of course, it was a significant drop from the record years of 2018 and 19 and so on, but people still kept on coming. And this is because at that time, Croatia was one of the countries that did not close its borders. Croatia was very, very, very pragmatic, knowing that COVID came just in time when they were opening their season, the summer season, right? And that's very significant for Croatia because Croatian tourism mainly happens between April, at that time mainly happened between April and October. So having COVID coming, they decided to be one of the countries that introduced the traffic light system, meaning that if you are coming from a country that doesn't have as many COVID positive patients according to in ratio with the residents, then you're coming from a green country and therefore you're welcome. They also were relying on the fact that, well, COVID is spreading through, aerially, through air, and therefore if our tourism is happening outside, which is the sun and the sea destination, we are good. So this also helped that some of the airlines were kind of bringing tourists in. People were still visiting Dubrovnik. And these are, I would say, the calculations that I did. But I also looked back, if you remember, I mentioned that Dubrovnik was bombed. So the bombs were flying in the beginning of the 1990s. From 1991 to 1993, 1994, there were zero overnight stays and zero arrivals in Dubrovnik. So apparently, when the enemy is very visible, then we are very scared and we don't visit the destination. And when the enemy is invisible but still there, we are okay and we visit the destination. So this is a very strange behavior that was observed. As a flying destination, being Dubrovnik, I would say, had a few more years, 2021, 2022, 2023, to catch up with the old, I would say, before COVID numbers, while other destinations in Croatia and also in Slovenia recovered faster than Dubrovnik, simply because they were the drive-through to destinations or drive-through destinations, while Dubrovnik was a very fly-in destination. It's at the bottom of Croatia, so you need to kind of do a very, very long drive to reach it. And the countries that are in the nearby area are not the ones who are usually visiting Dubrovnik. So what happens what were the impacts of this high cruise and film industry tourism? So the more tourists visited the city, the less residents decided to stay in the old town. So in 2011, when we have the census, there were around 3,500 residents in the old town, so bounded by the walls. In 2021, so 10 years after, there were only around 1,500. So losing 2,000 residents from the old city, which is the most attractive part of Dubrovnik, was a major hit for the city and for the tourism, for Dubrovnik as a tourism destination. Overcrowding was something that was picked up by UNESCO, because UNESCO said that in the old town, you can only have up to I think 6,000 or 7,000 people. So at the same time, at the same place. So that was their carrying capacity that they kind of set. Dubrovnik exceeded that by 100%. So at one point, there were 12,000 people in the old town bounded by the city walls, right? And the ratio of tourists to residents was 27:1, which is very, very high. So Dubrovnik kind of was the city where tourists were moving in, but on the other hand, the residents or the locals were moving out. That strained at their small and medium enterprises, the coffee shops, and everything else. And of course, not to mention the prices soaring. The interventions that the city did are all kind of recognized from 2000 and I would say 18 onwards. Of course, some of them were abolished during COVID, but nonetheless, many of them stayed. So municipality said, we've had enough. We need to make our city welcome to residents. We need to put quality of life first and then build on the quality of visit. So they introduced their initiative, Respect the City. And why are we hearing about this Respect the City initiative is because even if it was introduced in 2017 and 18, at this particular moment, it is celebrated by the European Commission, and that's why Dubrovnik is getting all the awards, something that we wouldn't imagine at that time. So Respect the City was the initiative that kind of promoted the dispersal of the visitors beyond the city walls, stimulate new itineraries and attractions. Some regulations were reviewed and adapted as the time went by. The city infrastructure and facilities were improved for the purpose of quality of life. And also the city set monitoring, I would say, and response measures because they were able to, right? Dubrovnik is a bounded city. You can enter the old town only through 3 different entrances. And these entrances help set surveillance cameras that can count the visitors of the old town. So those that you can't distinguish between a tourist and a visitor, but at the same time, it's available to everyone, and everyone can actually plan their visit based on some projections and forecasts of when is the best time to visit the old town. So maximum carrying capacity was set at 8,000. And because, as I said, it's bounded with 3 different entrances, they have the ability to put someone at the entrance and say, stop, you cannot enter until the next person exits the city, right? So that's one way of organizing it. Of course, it's costly, but I think that they were doing it at some point. This is how it looks like. You have, cameras, and it's available to everyone, so you can go and check it out. You have the people counters, you have the cameras, you can have the predictions as well. So people can organize, their way around Dubrovnik, and the most, I would say, the places where with the most attractions. What happened is that because Dubrovnik had this very good thing, which was Dubrovnik Pass. So you would buy a ticket for 1 day, 3 days, or 7 days, and then you would go and you would visit different attractions. So in the recent time, they digitalized it. So they digitalized it and connected with these cameras and the predictions and the numbers, so that actually if you buy a Dubrovnik digital pass, it gives you information through the app of when is the best time to visit certain attractions because there are not many people coming. So people counting became slightly more easier, right? And managing visitor flows also became quite easy to do. Also, the pass offers you bus tickets around the city and outside the city. So this is something that they're trying to disperse the visitors outside of the city. Stimulating new itineraries. This is the study that we tried to do when I was still part of the University of Greenwich. So we did a digital detox study where we, for 2 consecutive years, invited tourists to hand their cameras or phone to us without looking at the GPS and just go and explore Dubrovnik. We gave them some substitution to take the photos, and we actually saw that if you introduce new technologies to tourists, they would be anxious, meaning that no non-digital cameras if anyone is trying to do this kind of study. Tourists are the ones who perceive that the other tourists are bothering their quality of visit. It's not the residents. Residents are quite fine with tourists. People working in the cafes or hospitality places are also quite fine with tourists. They accept it because it's the way of life. But the tourists are those that are most concerned with how other tourists are destroying or their quality of visit. And that's the study that we did with some colleagues before COVID started, and it was tourists bothering tourists. Every other relationship within that triangle was quite fine. So what happened to Dubrovnik is actually the post-COVID-19 recovery. If you would be looking into what hearing about Dubrovnik, it got so many accolades or awards right after COVID. And this is simply because when the whole Croatia was recovering its tourism numbers, so going back to the usual, Dubrovnik recovered slowly. For example, if Istria or Rovinj or Opatija got again 80% of their pre-COVID numbers, at that point Dubrovnik got only 20%. So I think that also the local tourism organization was quite anxious of maybe not getting at the same pace. So they started nominating Dubrovnik for the best cruise destination, being the pioneer of smart tourism and so on. And Dubrovnik got many accolades. Of course, that is going to generate more and more visits. They are back now. They were already in 2022, but they are back now to their pre-COVID numbers. The only thing that has happened is that the daily visitors to the old town, simply because of all of these measures, has slightly decreased. It also, the impact that the prices have on the main season, which is July and August, the impact that the prices have can be quite significant. So when I was there in 2022, we paid for 14 days stay outside of the old town in an apartment, like, let's say, 2,500 euros. The next year, 2023, the same apartment in the same time was 6,500 euros. So increasing the prices also kind of helped in increasing the visitor numbers a little bit before and after the summer, which was the main season in Dubrovnik. Here are some of the references. If anybody wants to take a look a little bit more into the studies of Dubrovnik. And this is currently all from my side.
Thank you very much, Tina. That was super interesting, and so great insights about the why Dubrovnik has become so popular. I've heard so much about Dubrovnik, and it's always sort of mentioned when it comes to over-tourism amongst other cities in Europe. But so just to explain the rise in popularity that exceeded the doubled capacity. That was super interesting, and what has been done to to address it, and also tourists bothering tourists. I think we can all relate to that. And someone actually put in the chat that annoying tourists are always the other people. And again, I think we can all always relate to this as well. We don't really see ourselves as annoying tourists, but everyone else is. So I'm just looking at the chat. There are no questions at the moment. So I'm just going to pass over to Heiske, and then we'll have some questions. I certainly have some questions if nobody else does. But I'll give the floor to Heiske, and then we will come back to questions. Thank you so much again. Super interesting.
Okay, great. Let me share my screen first. Can you see it now? I think you can, right?
Yeah,
It's on my
yeah.
other screen, so okay.
Brilliant.
Yes, brilliant. Thank you.
Okay, I can see my screen, but I cannot see you anymore. That's a pity. But let me just start, and if you have questions, let me know. So I'm happy to share my key insights of the research I just told you about on resident sentiment that we just published a few weeks ago. And we did this research actually in collaboration with the DMO of Amsterdam, which is Amsterdam and Partners. And I hope it is a step towards creating a more balanced tourism in Amsterdam, because we all know that Amsterdam, just like cities as Dubrovnik, we just heard, is facing a lot of over-tourism. And of course, although we should not ignore these alarming sounds, I think this research shows actually that the way in which Amsterdam people, residents, experience tourism is a bit more balanced and also a bit more optimistic than we often hear in the media. So let me share a bit of the results. And the study was conducted in 2025 and also before in 2022. And in the last survey, we also added some ad hoc questions from in Holland and also from the gemeente Amsterdam. So we had a lot of data brought together in 2025. But the main survey is the one from Amsterdam and Partners, which had around 1,000 respondents in both 25 and also in 22. And as we see in both years, respondents have been living in Amsterdam for a very long time. So that means that they know the city very well, and they also have seen it changed firsthand. And if you look at the photo, I don't know if you can see my mouse, but you can see that respondents are actually from all parts of Amsterdam. But we know, of course, that Centrum, which has 10% of the respondents, is the main tourist area. So we know that by numbers, but also when we asked respondents how often is your neighborhood actually visited by tourists, this is also confirmed by Centrum residents. This slide shows the general answers of this question. And as you can see, there are some different feelings of how often tourists actually come to neighborhoods in Amsterdam. So there's actually, the options are very divided, but it's surprising to see that there are also a lot of neighborhoods that are actually never visited by tourists or rarely. But when we dive a bit deeper into these results, as I just mentioned, Centrum is also perceived as most often visited, but we also see some surprising other things there, such as North. If you look at often visited and never visited, North is in both top threes actually. And how is that possible? North is a very stretched out neighborhood or district, and it can be possible, and actually it is also possible, that some of the neighborhoods in North are very touristic, while others won't ever be visited by visitors. So this tells us actually that within neighborhoods, within districts, residents can have quite opposite feelings about how often their neighborhood is actually visited. So there are quite different feelings about tourism volumes here. And interestingly, so the tourism presence that we just saw in the last slide, that does not necessarily lead to more negative thoughts on tourism. When we look at 2022 and we compare both results, we see that the overall sentiment here is a bit more positive in 2025, although we also see that opinions still vary widely. But we can see that there's a decrease of 6% when it comes to more positive than negative consequences. And interestingly, when we look at Centrum, so people living in Centrum that answered this question, we see that this number is even higher. So more than half of the respondents in living in Centrum even see more positive than negative consequences. And on the other hand, I did not show the results on this slide actually, but if we look at district New West, where respondents in the last slide answered that their neighborhood is actually never visited, we see that they have a more negative sentiment on tourism. So this is really something to keep in mind when rethinking tourism policy, because this tells us that tourism volume alone is not the only factor on negativity on tourism. Actually, there's much more that we have to look into. So I just said there is more positivity, but at the same time, we should also, of course, there are also still problems. And we also see that the far majority of the respondents actually think that tourism generates problems. So 82% even said that it creates problems in the whole year or in some seasons of the year. And this also counts for respondents who agreed in the last slide that there are more positive than negative consequences. So respondents are mostly concerned about things like overcrowding, but also things like how tourists actually behave, or also about their own quality of life. So there are problems and we should acknowledge that. But at the same time, there's also optimism because, as said before, more respondents noticed the positive influences than they did in 2022. And they really see the opportunities that tourism brings for the local economy. So in general, residents are more positive about tourism than before, while they also experienced problems at the same time. So although we should not ignore the problems that exist, so these results actually suggest that some of the measures that the municipality of Amsterdam has taken in recent years may actually be working. So besides, it's also good to see that residents of Amsterdam are actually very proud of their city, and they are actually very likely to recommend Amsterdam as a place to visit. As you can see in this graph, almost a quarter of the respondents actually gives a 10 out of 10 when asked about this likeliness to recommend. And only 8% gives a score of 5 or less. So that's really positive. Besides, many residents also are very proud to see tourists, and they also like to give tips and advices. And what is also positive is that place attachment is very high. And these results are compared to data from 2018. And we see a small decrease in place attachment compared to 2018, but it's still around 80%. And although we see a lot of positivity here, and also that Amsterdam's residents are actually very proud of seeing tourists, we at the same time also see that they have more concerns and more emotional feelings. And we also call this the emotional paradox. There are more concerns, for example, about the disappearing of local customs, about traditions. And we also see that Amsterdam people are, it sounds a bit weird, but feeling ashamed of how the city looks now. That's how the question was asked. So we see two opposite things at the same time. And this actually shows us that people, they can really love their city and they can also really love sharing it. But at the same time, they can also still feel a lot of pain when they see the city changing too fast. I hope I clicked the slides well. Yes. So still, it's we see both sides, but we still think that this proudness, this results really in the fact that residents really want to share their city with tourists. When we look at this graph we asked people about room for tourism growth in Amsterdam, and we see that opinions are still very divided, but we see so much more positive change than in 2018. Like more than half of the respondents actually says that there's still room for tourism growth in Amsterdam. However, of course, we should also look at the red part of the graph, because 30% is still against room for growth. So opinions are actually very divided. And when they are, when they think there is still tourism growth, they also have several requirements, and more than before. For example, they want Amsterdam to be more selective in attracting specific types of tourists. And they also show more support for measures such as more tourist taxes or tourist redistribution. So these results actually indicate that residents are not actually anti-tourists, but that they want to see more effective measures to manage tourism better, and also policies and measures that really take their concerns seriously. And that is also confirmed in this slide, because our research also showed that residents really want to have a voice, and that they really want to be more involved in decisions related to tourism, also compared to 2022. At the same time, half of them already states that the local tourism policy takes their voices into account. So that's pretty high, and also 40% state that they already have a say decision making regarding tourism. So also here we see a positive change compared to 2022. But yeah, of course, even more attention could be paid to this, because when people feel that they are not involved, the negative emotions that we just saw earlier, they of course can increase, and that can reduce public support for tourism. So I think that our research actually showed that there are many nuances in the way that how residents feel about tourism, and it also tells us that it's not this or that. It's not black or white. Generally speaking, residents are more positive. They are more proud about Amsterdam and tourism in Amsterdam than before. They feel strongly attached to their city, and they also recognize the positive influences of tourism. But at the same time, they also see that it creates a lot of disadvantages and problems. It is, however, important to note that in this research we noticed that some things or issues that they mentioned, such as housing prices or traffic issues, parking issues, they are not only caused by tourism, but residents do associate them strongly with tourism. And we also should see that there are significant differences in feelings depending on factors such as how long have they been living in Amsterdam, where do they live, in which district do they live, in which neighborhood do they live, do they actually benefit from tourism themselves? Things like that are also important for the feelings and sentiment that they have. So for us, that means that good communication is even more important than before. And the policy should even be more take into account tourists and also residents. And also we have to look into measures that fits different districts, different neighborhoods, and also keeping in mind the other personal characteristics that I just mentioned. So I hope I just quickly gave you some insights into our latest research. And I just mentioned we just published it. link to QR code here if you want to see the full publication. So yeah, looking forward to hearing your reactions or questions. And let me finish the slideshow to see you again. Thank you. Sorry. Yes, I can. It's a bit weird presenting while not seeing anyone.
Thank you. Thank you so much. And do you, so I've got a question that is sort of related to the research, because the research is super interesting, but have any decision already, has sort of any management decision ever been taken based on your research? So you know how residents feel, but has anything, has more sort of concrete management measures have been implemented as a result of this research? Or are you planning, or is the DMO planning to implement something concrete based on this?
Yeah. Well, we just published the research 2 weeks ago, but of course, within the municipality of Amsterdam and also within the DMO and their stakeholders, it was published a bit before. And there's, of course, a lot of interest in it. I work for in Holland, the university, so I work together with the DMO. I don't know exactly what they have been doing with the research now, but I know that they are looking into it, and they had some sessions already with the municipality and some political parties to see how we can use it. But actually, I was not involved in the meeting, so I should ask Amsterdam partners for more in-depth information. Yes.
I'm sure they will do a lot sort of based on this, and because this was a question in one of our participants posted sort of before the webinar, and it's also a question to Oksana, because Oksana, your research also you've got fantastic results already, and great start in looking around the Garda, but then. Has anything already been concrete, and any management decision have been done? For example, have you set a threshold of the maximum carrying capacity, or are you planning to do it? How is this working in your destination?
So we have not set the carrying, replying to your last question, we have not set, in this case, we have not set the carrying capacity limits, because we need first to understand who are the day visitors and who are they, and we need to study it better. So our recommendation to the DMO and to the whole stakeholders was in terms of, before we actually do any intervention, we need to understand better what's going on. I do have other studies in which we did set the thresholds, yes, but not in this one.
Okay, thank you. So I think there was a question might be connected to what you just said. So it's about determining the maximum carrying capacity, and Emily asked, how does UNESCO determine the maximum carrying capacity within the designated sites? So I don't know whether you can answer that, or maybe Tina.
I'm not, I have not seen how UNESCO does it, but there are, I would say, UNESCO has had some kind of measures in place, because the space is very bounded, and I think that they could have evaluated how many people can be at one place at one time. The one thing I can say is Croatia has introduced a new methodology to measure carrying capacity, and they legalized it, so they made it mandatory. So they kind of looked at different destinations, meaning municipalities, and they said if your ratio or number of tourists exceed a certain level, you need to assess your carrying capacity, and there is a whole methodology that is available, and it was just recently accepted as of last year as a part of the new law that they kind of accepted on tourism. So Yeah. Before they did it, before that was legalized, nobody was doing it. And now it's mandatory. So a lot of destinations are now trying to measure their carrying capacity in using some kind of methodology that exists. I just need to be able to dig it up, and I can always share.
Right, thank you. We do have a question from Anna. Oh, it's Anna. Hello, Anna. Anna presented from Aalborg, presented on Monday. Anna, there was a question to Tina again. So, have the local residents started to come back to the historic centre after the initiatives? So, I can see, Tina, you started replying, but maybe you can tell if people are not following the chat. It's also, I think there's also broader questions, maybe not only about residents starting to return, but is there any other impact on residents as a result of the initiatives to reduce the pressure in Dubrovnik?
I would say maybe, but I wouldn't say it's for Dubrovnik, but Croatia in general, and also Slovenia in general. They went through a phase of post-COVID, like changing of the laws, where we are seeing severe impacts on housing. So yeah, there is a huge pressure of not being able to find appropriate housing in the cities where people are living. So they're moving outside of the cities and then commuting into. And the public transport in these two countries is not perfect. And it's so far away from what we see in Netherlands, France, and so on. So it kind of creates a lot of pressure. So both governments changed their laws linked to hospitality, and part of that law is how do we provide affordable housing for local residents, which also puts a limit on in what parts of specific cities or towns or destinations you can rent to tourists and which parts are off the limit. So in Croatia, you have these, old buildings, high buildings where it's residents only. So they are saying unless you have 75% of all the residents signing the document and allowing you to rent, you can't rent it. So they are saying the residents in the block are going to be able to decide whether they want to have tourists in their building or not. So it's now community based. The same is in Slovenia. So they're maybe doing this more on a national level than just keeping it local. So yeah.
Thank you. We've got a question from Robin. So it's a question to all of you. Do any of the approaches consider or plan to waste or pollution generated by tourism to determine carrying capacity? So directly relating environmental social impacts and the cost of mitigation or other social and environmental burdens.
Well, we did consider. I would love to see. The problem here is data. So we managed to obtain data for air pollution in one of the municipalities that are heavily affected by traffic, and we are working on this data. I don't have results yet to share, but we do work on this. And now looking at your question, I was thinking maybe we can actually look also at the waste generation, given the culture of waste recycling in our area. Probably we do measure it.
I don't know, Tina, if you've got anything to add on this?
I would say if I go back to that question, when it comes to environment, right, or waste, I'm not familiar with the studies. However, linked to the question of the methodology and carrying capacity, I found like the measures, they are in Croatian, but we have amazing AI tools that can help that can help translate. And yeah, it has some, the quality of water, the quality of beaches, the available beaches in Croatia as a part of the measures. So I'll just share the document, which is in Croatian, and everyone can take a look at it and translate.
Yes, because one of the things here, just someone asked whether you could share the Croatian methodology. So that would be great. Sorry, I'm just quickly scrolling through the questions again.
I think Milda, you had your hand raised. Did you have a question?
I did have a question. It feels like the conversation moved further, so I can bring it back. It was very much specific to the research in Amsterdam. I'm a tourism professional and also a resident in Amsterdam, so that was particularly interesting to hear. And as a resident and as a tourism professional, I know about the quite a different tourism tax that was here introduced. I was wondering if in your research, was there any connection of communicating where that tourism tax is actually going and how is it benefiting the life of the resident? Currently, it's a huge gap, and it can also be extended as a question to both Tina and Oksana, because I see a lot of nodding.
Yeah.
And as a resident, that's the most important. And as a tourism professional, I'm trying to tell to my network and friends who are not there, I was like, this is a good thing. And they're like, but how does it benefit me? I was like, I don't know.
Yeah.
But it does.
That's a really, really good question, actually. And to be short, we did not include that in our research. The word tourism tax, we asked the question about tourism tax, and we know that people are very happy with this measure. And I don't know if people know how high the tourist tax in Amsterdam is nowadays. It's like 12.5%, I think.
For those who,
and also,
it might be interesting. So there is a fixed price per night, and
yes,
then there is a percentage
exactly.
based on the night spend of the spending per night. So that's quite unique. But what I've heard from my own network who are not understanding the tax, they were complaining that it's very high, and it's really hard to have that argument to say this is good that it's high. This is the one tax that you don't have to worry about being high.
Yeah, and I think this was not included in our research, but what was included is that people that communication with residents should be better, and people should know what the benefits of tourism are. So for sure, in the future, when we go talk with the residents about this research, we have to include that. That's a good idea, actually. Yeah. And I think in the I don't know the English word, it's the big uitvoeringsprogramma that the municipality has. They also mention a lot of things that they are doing now. So I think the municipality is involved in this subject. Thanks.
It's also connected. Lorna asked also, has there been an impact of introducing city tax in terms of number of tourists in the city? I don't know if any of you have seen this. So the tourist tax and the tourism numbers. Is there a correlation? Do you know?
I don't know for Amsterdam because also. Do you hear me?
Mm-hmm.
No, okay.
Yeah.
I don't know about Amsterdam because if I understand correctly, that's a new measure. The research, I have recently reviewed a paper on tourism tax and tourism numbers. So research shows that it has quite neutral impact on the numbers. It does have impact on revenues. So people maybe still come to, especially so that it looks like the tourism demand is steep, meaning it's not very elastic. And people will still come, especially to the most attractive destinations, but it will reduce the revenues it may reduce the revenues in the area. But again, it really depends on the destination.
If I may chip in what I know from Slovenia and from Croatia. So currently we have a project at my university that we're looking into how much tourism tax, since the law on that part of the law on sustainable tourism in Slovenia has changed in 2018. So how much tourism tax has come to municipalities, because the municipalities are the ones in Slovenia who are collecting the tax. So in 2018, it was on national level. Slovenia introduced like a tax per night spent, and the municipalities have the ability to either have the minimum or the maximum, which was 2.5 euros per night. And then on top of that, because they wanted to support the promotional activities, they introduced the promotional tax, which is on top of everything that you pay for staying at an accommodation. You pay extra for promotion, and that's 0.5 euros or something like that. So they kind of said the municipalities can decide whatever they wanna, but they need to collect tax. The one thing that is unknown is how the municipalities spend that particular tax. And now we're looking into that, because we've seen that, of course, not everything goes to support the DMOs. Not everything is very, I would say, directly linked to tourism, infrastructure development, and so on. It's part of, so it's the indirect costs which you need to distribute. So we are looking into where are the percentages and how is this going. It's quite tedious looking at 212 municipalities. But anyways, Croatia did something. They have a specific law which is linked to tourism taxation. And when I was speaking to people in Dubrovnik, the municipality, they said the government gave us the ability that we can introduce an extra tax on top of overnight stays, which helps us preserve the environment. So if we want to have more money to preserve the environment, there is a natural area tax, or a natural areas tax, that is now part of the new law, which was accepted 2 years ago. And one thing that because I'm looking now into taxation, I don't know if you're familiar, and I just put the link. Islas, I think it's Balearic Islands. They have a web page linked to sustainable tourism investments, and it's looking into, I would say, transparent communication as to how much tax comes in, how much tax goes out, and where that tourism tax is being spent on which projects. So I posted the link so you can take a look at it.
Okay, thank you. I'm going to have to wrap up. We've got one more question from Robin, but maybe I don't think it will be a quick one. So Robin, can we get back to you after the webinar? And thank you. Thank you very much for this. And actually, I just had a very quick look of whether UNESCO, what is UNESCO doing when it comes to what does the methodology? And there is I mean, I just Google it, so I don't know how reliable it is, but it says that UNESCO actually has a tourism program that provides different tools to help aid those calculations and encourage alternative livelihoods to reduce strains on heritage sites. And there's a sort of different methodologies and techniques there that allows UNESCO to sort of allow to set the social capacity limits. So maybe have a look at the UNESCO tourism program. That's what Google has just told me. And just to wrap up, let me just share my screen one more time for one slide very quickly. And we would like to invite you to our GDS Forum and Impact Day in a beautiful city of Szczecin in Poland. As it happened, it is my hometown. I was born there, I grew up there and went to university there, and I left a long time ago, but I always come back with just it always just warms my heart how beautiful the city is. It's green, it's very blue, there's loads of rivers, there's loads of parks. We're doing the GDS Forum and Impact Day in the middle of June, so Szczecin will be really green, really warm, hopefully sunny. And it's a fantastic example of regeneration. The city, there used to be a huge shipyard that provided loads of jobs. That it all collapsed in the 80s, and there was not much going on in the city. But then over the last few years, it's a fantastic example of regeneration. The event will actually take place in some of the buildings that have been really beautifully regenerated, and the whole area around the port and the old shipyard. You get an opportunity to see it and see actually regeneration in practice and in real life. And we've got a fantastic team in Szczecin who are working very hard on an exciting program. We actually had a session 2 or 3 weeks ago with several destinations to co-create a program. So it's for those of you who haven't been, it's kind of like a conference, non-conference. So there won't be any slides, there won't be any presentations. We will be discussing various sort of topics, issues that are challenges that are very important for and sort of current for all destinations. So there will be a lot of networking, experience sharing, knowledge sharing, and just hopefully a lot of fun. So we strongly encourage you to come to Szczecin. It's very easy to get to from Berlin. If you're flying in, or from the Nordics, it's easy to get to by train. And I think the early bird finishes on the 10th of April, if I'm not mistaken. So please go on our website, have a look at the program and all the logistics, and let us know if you've got any questions. And hopefully see you in Szczecin in June. So thank you very much to Oksana, Tina, and Heiske for your presentations. Super interesting. Makes me want to go to Dubrovnik, or I don't know if I want to contribute to exceeding the current capacity and not liking other tourists. But what you've presented really encouraged us. Maybe go in December.
No,
thank you both.
Come in May. Come in May.
Come in May, exactly. Thank you all again, and thank you for all the questions, and see you again soon, everyone. Thank you for your time.
Thank you.